Hello, 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 and welcome to this week's marketing. What was it again? I have not had a good night's sleep, I can tell you. Marketing, branding, and getting the sale. That's what we call the show. You think I'd know we'd be here every week, right? So today's focus is all about how to build relationships over the phone. We're going to be diving into, well, why is that important in the first place, even if you're not a salesperson? Yeah, we're going to be talking a lot with Stephen about this, and Jess and I will be pitching in with our questions and our thoughts as well. So before we get started, let's just do some quick intros. Jess, would you like to kick us off?
Yes, I think there's a little bit of a delay for me, so if there is, apologies. But yeah, morning for those of you that don't know me. My name is Jess. A lot of businesses now feel that competition is popping up left, right, and centre. The market is getting more crowded than ever. But together we can make sure your brand stands out and gets you chosen without having to offer any discounts. The discount as little as 10% can mean you've got to work 66% harder to get that same profit. So I've got a 6-step loyalty process that can help you get there. If you're interested in what that looks like or what that first step is, drop me a message and I'll send you a quick video that explains that process.
Lovely, thank you very much, Jess. And Stephen, over to you.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Stephen Lerman from Chameleon BDS, an outsourced business development service. So if you are looking to increase your business, but don't want to, or just don't have the resource to pick up the telephone and make those outbound calls to get you in front of more clients and make those appointments, then let's have a chat because I can do that for you.
Fantastic. And if you don't know me, my name is Una Doyle. My business is Creative Flow, and I can help any established business owner to unlock an extra 50K or more in only 50 minutes. And really, the whole thing behind this is about helping business owners to be able to create a business that they could sell tomorrow, but probably don't want to because it's highly profitable, fun to run, and they get to make a bigger impact in the world. And we utilize my impact driven growth model to do that. Okay, so let's get started then. Stephen, tell us, why is it that building relationships over the phone is so important?
Okay, then. So, well, first of all, rapport building is really an integral part of the communication process, as we all know. So, lack of or absence of rapport can fundamentally affect the outcome of any conversation. And when you build rapport, conversation runs smoothly, it's enjoyable, and the results are so much better than when the communication is strained and the outbound caller fails to gel with the person that they're talking to on the other end of the phone. So, phone calls do actually build relationships because you're connecting on a more personal level and you get to understand your client better. Okay, so a phone call engages so much more than, let's say, an email because it's in the moment. And a phone call is especially useful if you're anticipating a lot of questions. You can cover all of these in one phone call rather than sending lots of emails backwards and forwards, and then you're just waiting and time drags on. Um, People remember a voice, don't they? And they remember the way that that person may have helped them. They may want to speak to that person again the next time they have an issue, and they may be so pleased with the personal touch that they were given. They'll provide positive feedback to your business, or even better, recommend you to somebody else. In a world where, well, we know competition is fierce. It's the relationships you have with your customers or your potential clients that provide the competitive edge and creates loyalty. Now, I've got to remember, good rapport isn't about making friends with the person on the other end of the phone. It's merely creating a comfortable state where all parties can converse freely and comfortably.
So I get what you're saying about phone relationships being more personal. Um, a lot of people would say, I'm just curious, like, how does this work with younger generations who actually can be quite reluctant to talk on the phone? They're so used to messaging back and forth, you know, whether it's on their phones or on the computers. And they actually are kind of like, the phone, what's that? Like, that's very old fashioned to speak on the phone. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, in the first instance, phone calls are easier, they're faster, and there's no misunderstandings when you when you pick up the phone and have a conversation. There's so many times when things can be
Mhm.
misconstrued um, by sending a text. You can't read any emotion in a text, can you? I mean,
Mm.
people say if you're shouting, you send a text in capitals, but it's depersonalizing a conversation. Now I know they do it for speed and efficiency, but I think it's actually has the opposite effect, really. And I know, for argument's sake, you send voice notes, which is kind of in between. So it's a
Mm.
text, but it's a voice note. And again, you can hear the emotion, you can sense the urgency in your
Yeah.
voice, more so than a text. And I think we just have to train the next generation that phone calls still are the way forward. It's the only way you're going to truly understand the person that you want to connect with by
I think
talking
there
to
might
them.
be some managers that want to hire you to do that, Stephen, because I know for sure that there are people that are frustrated because younger generations won't, they don't want to pick up the phone. They don't even want to answer the phone necessarily. And it's not. I'm not even talking about if people are maybe a bit more introverted. But just for, yeah, and of course, like, I'm making a generalization. Of course, there are exceptions to that, but it is something that has been commented on and noticed definitely, as a trend with younger generations. So yeah. So you were talking about, like, there's less likely to be miscommunications on the phone. Um, so, like, in what you're looking to do, where you're looking to generate appointments and opportunities for people to get in front of their ideal clients, like, what kind of miscommunications could occur?
With Sorry, just ask that question again. I'm sorry.
Sure. But in a sales context,
Yeah.
what kind of miscommunications could occur if you weren't on the phone and if you didn't have the right skills to handle it?
So the thing for me is, when you're talking, you can ask tons of questions. If you don't quite understand something, if you're trying to communicate via email, it, it's much more difficult because you're going backwards and forwards. If we were talking on the telephone, let's say you were a potential client of mine or a prospect that I was calling on behalf of my client, and I wasn't quite sure what you did or where I felt I could help you, I would be able to ask a question. You could say something to me, and then I could say, "Well, could you just explain that a little bit more?" Rather than sending an email when you got to wait for the reply, and things happen, and you might get a phone call, or I might get busy, and
Mm,
it's just gone on and so long that we've lost the thread of the conversation. Whereas talking on the telephone, you can keep digging until you get the answer you want.
right. I think that's a really key point. The whole thing about instant messages, emails, when you're communicating in that way, I think number one, they're very easy to ignore,
Yeah.
and as you say, you can lose the thread, you can get distracted. It's way down on your priority list. When you got somebody there on the phone in that moment, then your priority is to deal with that, even if it's coming from a perspective of, oh, I want to get off the phone. um there's, you're in that moment, aren't you, having that conversation.
Absolutely. And let's say we're talking on the telephone, and you're a prospect, and I'm asking questions. And if you've got a problem and it's a complex problem, and I might be able to help you, and I think that's why we should engage. Um, if we're trying to arrange a convenient time to meet, or email. Well, not email. Email can go backwards and forwards. Where with a phone call, all the questions can be answered and issues can be resolved in a matter of seconds or minutes,
Mm,
and it just makes the flow so much easier. And there's that reassure. It's that reassurance more than anything. Yes, I can help you. I tend to. Um, Believe somebody more if I talk to them on the telephone. You can hear the intonation in the voice. You can
yeah.
hear they can make you feel calm, relaxed, and help you resolve a potential problem.
What about you, Jess? Are you more of a pick up the phone person, or are you more likely to message somebody or email them?
It does depend. I'm a huge fan of voice notes as well, so I send a lot of voice notes. But yeah, it does. It just depends what stage of the relationship I'm at with them in the journey, and that's something else I was thinking at the calls that you're making, Stephen. Them sales calls. You know, your prospects are right at the beginning of your buying journey, so there is a lot of doubt, uncertainty, kind of, fear. Kind of there's a lot of that feeling going on. So being able to warm that up and kind of reassure that, like you say, a lot quicker, it's really powerful. But also something else that I've been thinking of as well is I've heard a lot of people saying that they've really got on with the first person, if you will, the first person they've interacted with. They've really got on with them. They really understood the pains, the challenges, what they want. They've put together this package for them or something like that and gone, yeah, this is great. This is what you need. And then they've maybe been passed to an account manager or someone else internally, and they don't feel like they've got that same relationship. So even building relationships on the sales point of view, I wanted to know what advice or what tips or what your thoughts are around carrying that on through the process. And when you've got a client that's a loyal client that's been with you for a while, or a customer, keeping up that relationship through phone calls and that telephone relationship and things like that.
Okay, so this is a big one. So in some organizations, you'll have a business development manager or new sales, and then you'll have an account manager. So there'll be a handover at some point. Now, for me, I don't like that, because the new business or the salesperson has developed that relationship, and then the client feels like they're being palmed off onto an account manager that doesn't have that relationship. So what I would suggest is having a meeting or a conference call or something, so there's a proper handover, and that the client feels he can still talk to the original person that they started that relationship with. So that if there's any questions, or that if they're feeling a little unsure about the account manager, they can always go back to
Yeah.
their to their original salesperson to say, listen, I'm not quite sure, or can you help me, or can you have a word with the key account manager? So you're always keeping that relationship, because getting a new sale is easy. Holding on to the client is a lot more difficult. So if you because sometimes the key account manager doesn't have the same skills as the new salesperson, because they're all about retention rather than winning the business to begin with. It's a slightly different set of skills, I think. So by keeping the two of them
Especially different
together.
personalities as well, I think. So, like looking at the ignition compass, and quite often the person getting the new sales is very more extroverted, much more people focused. The account manager tends to be more about, they're still people focused, but in a different way. They're more grounded and about the detail and things like that. So
I'm
yeah,
very
so
I'm
yeah,
very sorry, I'm very protective over my sales, over my new clients. I don't like handing them off. And it's, it does work for some organizations, but if you can keep your hand in the pie, or your finger in the pie, and still be involved in those conversations, and don't get, as long as you're not cut out of the conversation
yeah,
completely, there's
yeah,
an opportunity there for you all to coexist in this happy space where your client feels loved. 'Cause it's all about feeling loved at the end of the day. The client wants to feel special. Like they're the most important. Now they know they're not the most important person in the world, but if you can make them feel that way, then there'll be no reason for them to go anywhere else. If you
exactly. Chris, I was just saying, when I did the sales job, so he did appointment booking for car brands and dealers. We were able to follow up from letters and emails. We were able to answer questions to help people make an informed decision, and maybe push them over the line. So welcome back, Chris. By the way, if you're watching live, put a hashtag live in the comments. If you're watching on the replay, put a hashtag replay, and we will come back and answer any questions if you are watching a bit later. Um, Chris also is saying, with a few younger recruits who have to be trained by shadowing a more experienced agent and listening in on their calls. Yeah, there's nothing that is such a great way of training. You've got to have personality and be personable rather than be salesy and pushy. Absolutely. Some didn't have the enthusiasm. Hang on, this is so long. It's not showing up. Others had the charm and charisma. That was for you, Stephen.
there you go. Listen, I think Chris and I's been reading my notes.
So,
Yeah.
great. So I think we got a good idea then why it's so important to be able to build good relationships over the phone. Um, So have we covered all the reasons, or was there anything else that we've
No,
not?
that's it. Those are
Yeah.
for me. Those are the main reasons why
Mm.
we should build relationships over the phone. So, but the next part, and this is where these are my top 5 tips for how to, how to build relationships over the telephone. And they're simple. And if you think about it, you think, oh, yeah, why don't I think of that? There's um, nothing out of the ordinary. It's just simple everyday stuff. But if you do these 5 things, I think guarantee you'll have better success being on the telephone. So, are you ready for my top 5 tips?
Before you get started, actually, I just want to say that a lot of the time, the things to do to be successful are not rocket science, but they're quite often things that people know, yet they're things they don't do. So, so as you're listening to this, the question to ask yourself is not, have I heard this before? The question to ask yourself is, am I doing this consistently? Off you go, Stephen.
And just before I do, what you said about it's not rocket science, and we know it. We just need to hear it. So you and I had a conversation last night about that, and you're absolutely right. It's there, but we need a prompt to
Mm.
remind us. Oh yeah, that's how you do it. So here we go. Number one, dead easy. Double check the name and pronunciation of somebody that you're talking to on the telephone. Now, whenever I pick up a phone and I've got a really weird name in front, not weird, but a really difficult name, I always say to the person, okay, I'm going to have a stab at this and I'm going to get it wrong. So I'm apologizing in advance, but could I speak to such and such? And generally it'll provoke a laugh because the first person that you talk to on the telephone, it invariably is going to be the gatekeeper. And whilst you don't actually don't want to talk to them, by putting them at ease and having a laugh and a joke and making them feel relaxed will genuinely get you a little bit further. So I always say, "Can you have I said that right?" And they'll laugh. Or what I'll do is I'll write it out phonetically in a note somewhere in my CRM so that I know how to say it the next time. Because I personally, I think I have the easiest name in the world. It's Lerman, Lerman, but I can't tell you how many people spell it wrong, pronounce it wrong, and I'm like, no, it's just German with an L. It's simple, Lerman. So just make a conscious effort to spell the name correctly or ask somebody, how do I say it? And sometimes will say, oh, you've had a good go at that. That's not a bad effort. So it's a basic level of courtesy, and it's helpful in building rapport over the phone right from the very start.
Well,
Okay.
if you can get a laugh as well, that's always a good thing, isn't it? Yeah, and
Yeah.
actually, by the way, if you're watching this on LinkedIn, then you have the ability to record the pronunciation of your name, and it will show up as a little speaker next to your name. I've done it, so you can go and click it. By the way, you've got enough time to kind of get a little sales message in there as well.
And I've done that,
So,
and it works.
yeah, so absolutely. So go and check that out.
Definitely,
Great.
great tip that. A- Again, simple tip. Practice active and reflective listening. So, you know, I was always told we've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. We should use them in that order. Okay, it's simple. So listen carefully as the person on the other end of the phone speaks. Take note of any detail they share about their living situation, personal life, and personal priorities. And simple short responses like, okay, and right, indicate um, that you're listening without interrupting them fully. And I've been guilty of this so many times. I do talk over people because I get excited and I know I've got an answer and I've got a response. And I know I can help them, so I'm excited to tell them, but I just need to wait and listen. So don't do as I say, don't do as I do. Do as I say. So practice active and reflective listening. Okay, it's easy, apparently. um,
What's your thoughts on what Stephen's shared so far?
I think the listening is hugely important, and we've said it before in some of the lives as well, haven't we? Where we might think that we're amazing listeners. We might say, "Oh, are you a good listener?" Yeah, I'm a great listener. But how often are we actually listening, and how often are we actually taking it in and not just waiting for a space to speak? So I know something that I can't remember where I heard it or read it, but even just repeating people a little bit. Oh, so did you mean this? It might have been from you, Una. Did you mean this? Did you mean that? Oh, yeah, I know what you mean. Kind of coming into that. And something else I notice as well when I'm watching conversations or I'm into conversations, I'll notice that someone might be actually opening up and being quite vulnerable about something. And the person that is listening maybe doesn't really know how to react. So jump in with, oh, yeah, I've been there as well. And then go in with their story. I've done this, I've done that. And you can see the other person kind of step back a little bit mentally and go, okay, yeah, I'll go back in I'll go back in my shell a little bit and let you kind of speak. But it's because we're not mean, and we're not bad people, but it's just kind of we panic and go, I don't know how to react to this, or I'm going to make them feel better by telling them my story and they're not alone. But there's ways of doing it. So when someone's opening up and being vulnerable, especially, listening to them, repeating them, reflecting back at them, and it's something that we naturally, probably not naturally, but subconsciously we just miss doing. So yeah, being proactive about it, it's huge, even just in day-to-day personal relationships, not just in sales calls. So yeah.
Well, I think that's really interesting. And actually, I was listening to a podcast yesterday. There's a chap who I think Stephen, you might know him, Paul Furlong.
Yes. No,
Yeah,
Paul. Yep.
and so he's got a podcast, and he was interviewing someone else I know, called Ian McMichael,
Yep.
and they
Know
were
him too.
talking about this. Now, Ian actually does he volunteers for the Samaritans, and uh, they. He was talking about this, and he was saying, like, you could be on a conversation for an hour and literally just go, mm-hmm, mm, uh-huh, yeah. Yeah, just every now and again, not as fast as I did it just there. To just wow, like that's real listening when you're doing that, and maybe just as we said, just reflecting back. All right, so what I'm hearing is this, or it seems like X. So yes, it is really really important for sure.
Absolutely. Definitely. Okay. Tip number 3: show empathy. So when you're building a rapport over the phone, it's important to show empathy to the other person. So phrases like "I understand," or "I can see how that might be frustrating," or "and I imagine that must feel good," are great ways to build a relationship and a positive experience with your clients. So be sure to keep the I in your phrasing to add more connection between you and your client. And a great way to practice is obviously to put yourself in your client's position. Una, you said that to me several times when I'm trying to put my MDP together, my market dominator position. Put yourself in the position of the client so you understand and you can see where they're coming from. And if I can give a shameless plug for a book which highlights empathy, it's Never Split the Difference by a gentleman called Chris Voss, Voss, who is a former FBI hostage negotiator. And it's amazing. And he nails this to a T. So Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. It's an amazing book. Okay. So, tip number 4: put your personality into your script. This is so important. Okay. Um, Now, I know some people might be quite hesitant about a script because you might sound robotic, and if you get a question that comes out of left field, you're like, and you start to get flustered. But if you put your personality into a script, and then it enables you to be a bit more flexible, and you can go off script or off piste, and you won't have so much of a problem. Um, you know, so I've had instances where I've been in my office and I've been talking, and the dog's made a noise or have done something, and they can hear it in the background, and they'll say, "Oh, you've got a dog," and you say, "Yeah, I've got this type of dog," or whatever, and you'll branch off, you'll have a conversation about your pets, walking the dog, great walks to go to, but what this does is this actually humanizes the conversation. Um, and it's just a quick flash of a personal touch that lets you see the other person on the other end of the phone, that you're a human being, and not just another salesperson. I've actually fallen off a chair in the middle of a script, a conversation. I can't tell you, I was so embarrassed, and the woman on the other end of the phone was just laughing. She asked if it was okay, obviously, but there's things like that. Or my dog was just licking his paws so loud, it was like. And, and as soon as the woman picked up the phone, I went, Amos, will you stop licking your beep feet? And she just couldn't stop laughing for 30 seconds. But you see, and those are the conversations that your high volume call centers don't have, or things like
Yeah,
that, because it's a box ticking exercise, whereas we like to build relationships. That's how I operate. I build relationships, and I try to inject my personality into a script as often as I can. Sometimes it doesn't work, and you'll get a real Debbie Down on the other end of the telephone. But I like to talk to everybody. So when I'm talking to the gatekeeper or the PA or whoever answers the phone, the receptionist, I always try to be chatty. I always ask about the weather. I always ask how they are. How are you coping with the weather? Oh, I've come into the office because we've got aircon. I'm like, brilliant. I don't have aircon. I'm sweating profuse. It's disgusting. It's those types of conversations that you have that will just set you apart from everybody else, because there'll be somebody else that'll call. They're like, all business, no, no personality, no pleasure taking in the phone call. The bottom line is everybody wants to buy. They just don't want to be sold to. So inject your personality into a script, build that relationship, take a little bit of extra time, and it works. I'm telling you, it
absolutely.
works.
Yeah, Chris is just saying, script. I was just going to mention that. I think you have to be relaxed and practice being able to break from the script. Exactly. If you ask about them before you sell, they'll be more receptive. Exactly, just as Stephen just said. He wrote that before Stephen said it, but so yeah, absolutely. I think this is really true. Um, People have to have. I mean, if you're going to be reaching out to people, I think that personality is really, really important. But what about people who maybe are a bit more, not that they don't have a personality, but maybe are more introverted? Um, they may not feel as comfortable doing this. I mean, what would be your advice to those people?
Um, Call me and I'll do it for them.
And that definitely is, joking aside, that definitely is, one kind of
Yeah.
recommendation for sure.
Um, so if people are a little bit more self-conscious about it, or nervous, or I would say practice with somebody else, practice with a friend, in the first instance. Get comfortable talking on the telephone, because these people will actually be having conversations on the phone with other people all day. They don't just unless they live on a desert island, they don't talk to anybody. They won't be conversing all day by text or by emails. They will be having conversations. It's just getting used to being relaxed, and at the end of the day, these people on the phone that are going to be making the phone calls are experts in their respective fields. So the other person they're going to be talking to doesn't know as much as they do. So they should think, okay, I'm the expert. I know what I'm talking about. Have a bit of self belief, and eventually it'll come. And one thing, this is my final tip, but it kind of works with the people that are nervous or unsure about making phone calls or being on the telephone and trying to build a relationship, is if you smile at the very beginning of the phone call, it's so much more welcoming and relaxing, and the other person on the other end of the phone will subconsciously appreciate it, and will like you. Because you can hear a smile in somebody's voice. Yeah,
Let's
absolutely.
do a little experiment, okay? So, as you're listening to this, unless you're driving, don't do this if you're driving. But I
Yeah.
was just gonna say, close your eyes. So, and if you're driving, hopefully you just are listening and not watching anyway. So, so just close your eyes, and Stephen, let's do in any particular order. Speak, say the same sentence, right, without smiling, and then say it when you are smiling in whichever order.
Hello, my name's Stephen Lerman. Please may I speak to Una Doyle?
And again.
Hi, this is Stephen Lerman. Please can I speak to Una Doyle?
Yeah, there was definitely a lot more personality in the second one, but we could see we could see the smile as
Yeah.
well. And you can totally hear the difference. It does. I, I think, well, number one, smiling actually affects our brain chemistry. So when we smile, it will change how we feel. So the more you smile, the better you're going to feel, even if in the beginning it maybe feels a bit false. So if you want to feel better, smile more anyway. That's going to help you. So, um, I
It,
think, yeah, beg your pardon. Go on,
no, I was
Stephen.
going to say it puts you in a good mood if you're smiling when you're on the phone. You can just, everything is just so much better when you smile, irrespective of, what's going on in your life. You pick up the phone, you're a different person, and you've got to connect with the other end of the person because the phone call is the first interaction they have with you. And if you're having a bad day and you're just not feeling it, it's gonna come through the other end of the phone and they're gonna pick up on it. So be happy, you put your personality into the conversation, into the script, and just go with it. What's the worst thing that could happen? They could say no, or now's not a good day, now's not a good time, call me back. You know,
Going
just
back to the smiles as well, how infectious is a smile? I was watching a documentary about it, maybe beginning of lockdown, because when we were all wearing the masks, we were all covering our faces, but you could still tell when someone was smiling at you, just the way their eyes were or the way they spoke, and how infectious that is. And the documentary that I was watching was actually it was a bit of a test, I think. So if you're like walking through, it's a few years ago now, but if you're walking through the high street or a crowded place and you see someone looking at something smiling, you subconsciously smile, whether you know them or not, whether you know the situation or not. So it'd be the same when you hear a smile, won't it, Stephen? I'm guessing if you hear that, the person on the other end, it's not only making you feel more confident and energized and better, but it makes that other person maybe smile as well and make them feel a bit better and a bit warmer to the conversation. But yeah,
yeah,
I find that really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. You can definitely tell if you're smiling at somebody, and then you can hear them smiling back at you. I know you can't really hear a smile, but you can definitely tell. The voice changes, the intonation changes. It goes up, doesn't it? If you're happy, you can definitely hear it, and it is infectious. Smiling is infectious. And it just makes life so much easier. If you're in a good place when you're picking up the phone for the first time. You know, like I said, it's the first interaction people are going to have with you because, not emails, the phone call, pick up the phone, instant response, and start building that relationship.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's the same, quite often when I'm working with clients and they're going to be going out with new messaging to networking events or making calls or whatever it might be. And, I always talk about, practice doing it and think about the emotion you're feeling when you're doing it. If this is something meaningful to you, the impact that you're looking to make in your business, then, you're naturally going to be excited about it. That's got to be communicated. And I think sometimes people need to maybe amp it up a little bit more than they would if they were face to face with somebody. So not over the top, but I think there's a little bit of if it sounds a little bit too much, that's probably about the right level, isn't it? And then you just get used to being at that level. What do you think? What do you think, Stephen?
Sorry, there was somebody at the door. And I missed that last. Just say that last bit again. I do apologise.
Well, I was just saying that when I think in a way when people are maybe rehearsing a script or practicing like a new elevator pitch or whatever it is, then that you want to amp it up a little bit. So if I just talk like I was okay, so there's somebody here, we're just talking like this, and it's going to be a little bit lower energy than if you're doing it on the phone or you're doing it on camera, and so it needs to be a little bit more animation there, I think, and making sure there's a bit more dynamism in the voice in order to sound natural to the other person.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because no matter how you think you sound, it'll be somewhat muted. So you're right, absolutely. Over, yeah, amp it up a little bit more extra, just so that it actually does come across. I know, I agree completely,
Mm.
definitely.
Chris is just saying you can hear if someone is bored or had mostly rejections. You have to be resilient and make people want to listen to what you have to say. So how do you do that? How do you make people want to listen to what you have to say?
Um, how do you make people want to listen to what you have to say? Um, be engaging, and also research who you're talking to so they know that you're just not picking up the phone for picking up the phone's sake. If you've done your research and you look into that person or that company and you can pick up on things that are going on in their life or in their business, and you can hit some of those hot points, they're going to want to listen to you rather than just reading a script that's um, not tailored to them, if you will. It's a standard script, and there's no personalization in that conversation to that person. So people will listen to you if you can relate. If there's something that you can say to them that is personal to them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So everybody that I pick up the phone to, I always look up. I always look them up first, just to see if I can connect in any way. Connection is key.
And I think
Absolutely.
it's a balance, isn't it? Because in order to be able to ask questions to make things more personalized for them, you've got to build that rapport first. Otherwise, you're just calling someone and interrogating them. They're going to be like,
Yeah.
"Why are you asking me these questions?"
Absolutely. Yeah. It's kind of like a catch-22, really. But do a bit of research, build that relationship, inject your personality, smile, all the things that I mentioned, all those top tips, do them all together along with the research of the person that you're calling or the company. And you can't really go wrong. And if they, if they don't engage, it's not meant to be. But, you know,
Yeah,
carry on, keep doing it. Absolutely keep doing it. Don't be
great.
disheartened.
You had a point five. I don't know whether you've already said it, and I just haven't written it down.
No, so point five, yeah, it was about smiling. Smile when
Ah,
you dial.
yeah,
Open the call with a smile. Start the conversation off positively. Irrespective of how you're feeling, start it off with a smile. As soon as you pick up the phone, you're there with a smile, and and they'll hear it right away.
fantastic. I think great tips. And, like we said at the beginning, they're not necessarily rocket science. Doesn't mean they don't work. Our brains often want to go for something that's new and exciting, and I think that can lead us down the path of going for fads and things like that. Quite often it's just about get the foundations right and in place and do them consistently, and then you'll have more success.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So even though all the five tips are equally as important, I would say the first one about getting the name right and the pronunciation is key, because that will show that you've taken the time
Mm,
to look up that person. And obviously if it's like John Smith, it's dead easy. But if it's a complicated spelling or pronunciation, if you make an attempt, they're more likely going to want to engage with it. It's the same if you go on holiday, especially in France. If you make no attempt to talk the language, no one will give you the time of day. But if you make an effort, even if you make a complete hash of it, they'll see that you've put the effort in.
yeah.
And it's that basic level of courtesy that I mentioned at the very beginning. It just helps build rapport, and then also the smiling, but everything in between.
Yeah.
They're all equally important.
You just remind me of, I remember being 14 in France with my parents, and I had a smattering of, 1 year of French from school, and, I remember being on the phone because we were kind of booking where we were staying as we went, and, I remember being in a phone box and, saying what I wanted perfectly, and then the other person responded, and I could not understand a word they were saying.
Brilliant.
I think sometimes it's downfall. I can pick up. I've a good ear. I can pick up accents quite well, um, but then I don't necessarily have the language knowledge to back it up. Oh yes. So yes, smiling, do your research, get the pronunciation. Put your
Listen.
personality in things. Have empathy. Yeah, I think they're all great tips. Jess, any questions or thoughts on what we've talked about here today?
I love the empathy one and leading with that emotion, because a lot of the time we do lead with logic because we think that that's how we make decisions. because that's our conscious mind working. So, making them kind of want to hear what you've got to say, leading with that emotion, how are you feel, how they're feeling, asking them, repeating it back to them. God, that must feel like this, like you were saying with empathy. I think that's really key, and not just in your sales scripts. That's key in any messaging that you do, any marketing that you're doing, whether you're speaking on the phone to one person, whether you've got a billboard that's speaking to 1,000 people a day, like, wherever you're speaking and whoever you're speaking to, leading with that emotion and justifying with logic. We fall into the trap of swapping them around, and it doesn't work.
For sure. Great stuff. Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you for sharing those great tips, Stephen. If you want to know more, please reach out to Stephen or myself and Jess if we can help with some other areas. And we will be back next week, same time. See you then. Bye for now.
See you then.